Hi everyone.
Hey, how's it going?
I am today with Bong from the channel Big Bong. I asked him if I could interview him and he accepted. So
thank you so much for your invitation. Sorry, I just, do you want to start again?
Can you not take over my introduction, please?
My apologies. I'm sorry.
So, I guess the sort of typical question, do you want to introduce yourself briefly? Basically, who are you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a YouTuber, I guess, very active on social media, and I make videos about language learning.
And what languages do you speak?
That's a tricky question, but I would say that I speak French, English, and Japanese. And I also studied, I can have conversations in German, Korean, and Spanish.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And we all do sort of language learning on YouTube and stuff, but like, what do you think sort of sets you apart from the others? How would you stand out?
Well, I don't think it's a competition. I don't want it to be a competition. I like you, I have a lot of polyglot friends.
So like what I mean is like what makes you special, basically? Because you are special.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. But one thing that I'd like to make clear is the fact that I don't consider myself a polyglot. Some people can call me wannabe polyglot. I want to be a polyglot, but I feel a bit fake because I'm not fluent in all these languages. And even Japanese, I've been living in Canada for 8 years. I don't have that many opportunities to speak the language, so I'm losing it. And so I don't feel comfortable enough to say that I'm fluent, right? So polyglot is a bit weird. And sometimes people, they want to have that goal of becoming a polyglot and being able to speak different languages fluent can also, we can also debate the definition of being fluent. So I would rather say language enthusiast or, language, passionate about language and languages. But so, I guess I'm also passionate about other things like, music. We talked about that, acting. And so I'm trying to merge everything into my YouTube channel and my daily life, basically. Okay, so that's one of my questions. So we'll dig into that a bit later. All right.
But would you use a specific word to define yourself? Would you say like you're bilingual, multilingual, or do you not define yourself at all, maybe?
Yeah. Well, if people ask me, I would say that I'm multilingual. I think I prefer the sound of that. It doesn't have the pressure of being a polyglot or a hyper polyglot and all the connotation it has. Language enthusiast, and also, I'm also multicultural because of my background, and so I like the term global cocktail.
Oh, okay.
So
never heard that one.
Yeah, so that's my description on social media: global cocktail and homemade entertainer, basically.
That's very catchy. I like that, actually.
It's pretty long though, but yeah.
Small break. We are too quiet, I think.
That's when we're laughing.
Is that too quiet?
Do you want to start over?
No, I don't want to start again. It's too boring. We had a nice flow as well.
It's too boring.
No, starting again. No. No, but we had a good flow. So.
Yeah. Sure,
I'm fucking bored, guys. This interview is over. Bye.
Bring back language sim.
Yeah, so could you maybe give us a more detailed sort of description of your languages? So you kind of mentioned you're fluent and stuff, but what's your kind of level? Maybe briefly, because that could take ages, but how you learn them or...
Yeah, so the funny thing is that for most people, native tongue and mother tongue is they're synonyms, right? For me, it's a bit different because I was born and raised in France, but my mother is Japanese. So literally, my mother tongue is Japanese and my native tongue is French. But the first language I've ever spoken was Japanese with my mother and my siblings. And after that, I went to school in France. And so French became my first language and my native tongue. And after that, I traveled around the world and I studied English. I moved to Canada and I was working for an American company, and English reached a level that's similar to French. And so I would say French, English, and then Japanese, and then the other languages.
That's very interesting. Why do you feel the need to differentiate between mother tongue and native tongue or native language? Why in your case? Which is fine. It's not.
No.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just to make people realize my background, and so people say, "Oh, what's your mother tongue?" And I say Japanese. Oh, I didn't expect that. Or and then I explain this. My mother is Japanese. So for me, it's very specific in the sense that the first language I've ever spoken is not the one I'm most comfortable with today. And so that's why it is my mother tongue, but it's, you know what I mean? It's like I feel the need to explain that, because when Japanese people speak to me, they feel like something is off a little bit. Like, oh, you sound like you have mastered the language, but not on a native level. So I would say, yeah, it's my mother tongue, but it's not my native language, you know? But if I say French is my native language and I speak with French speakers, it's like, yeah, no question about it. Like, you're a French speaker.
That's interesting because like I was born like speaking Portuguese as a first language, so I feel like we have something in common, which is very interesting to sort of meet someone that has like a similar like language background, or like experience rather. So when you go to Japan and speak to Japanese people, or even Japanese people in general, like, do you think they can notice that you speak Japanese fluently, but there's something that's not Japanese about you? Or would you...
Well, first of all, Japan is a very specific context. And there are a lot of, so we call it the Hafu community. So people who are born from a Japanese parent and a parent from a different nationality. And these people, they struggle because in the general mindset of Japanese people, you have to look a certain way to be Japanese. And so even though I used to have the Japanese citizenship until I was 20, I wasn't acknowledged as a Japanese person, except for my family, obviously.
Because of the way you looked?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, and sometimes when it gets insulting, it's when they insist on speaking English with you. And some of them are good, and it's fine, we can speak in English, but some of them are really bad, and they feel like I think the intention is good. Like, I don't want you to struggle in speaking Japanese, so I'm going to try to make all the possible effort to speak English with you. But then it makes things very complicated because they don't understand you. And you insist on like, okay, I'm speaking Japanese right now. Let's continue in Japanese. I can speak the language and I want to improve also. So it's a good opportunity for me, and it makes it easier for you. But they would keep on insisting like, no. They refuse, and it's a bit insulting, right? Some other people, obviously, when they say, where are you from? But really, where are you from? So some other people in different countries, even in the States, born and raised in the States, who get that question because of the way they look. I've had that in Japan. But again, I wasn't born and raised there, so it's a bit different. So I feel also foreign. Some things feel like I don't belong there, but some of the things feel like, I didn't grow up, but I have a lot of memories from Japan, from my grandparents, from my family. So I guess, again, it's not really relatable to everybody, but half Japanese people could have the same feeling.
So obviously you told me that you are Japanese and Lebanese and French, but that might sound like a weird question, but it's very personal, like how you identify. But do you feel Japanese? Like how...
I do, exactly, and it's what I described pretty much. I do have a sense of, it's in my blood, you know, and I see my grandparents' picture. They're both Japanese, and also the Japanese language has a certain very emotional effect on me. When I hear it, I'm deeply emotional, and growing up with all these anime I watched in Japanese directly, it has different sound, and I understand pretty much everything. So I feel like, in terms of understanding, I'm bilingual totally. And also with my mother today, we still speak Japanese together. But obviously, the government makes it very difficult for half Japanese people to stay Japanese. So I had to give up my Japanese citizenship.
Oh, you can't have dual citizenship, right?
Now you have to choose at 20, and I also became Canadian, so it was impossible for me to keep it. And so, of course, personally and symbolically, it hurt me a lot. But I don't want to make this video political, right?
That sounds really bizarre to me because... Obviously, your nationality, I'm not even Portuguese officially. I mean, I am, but like I don't have the passport. But I feel like you were Japanese, or at least officially, on top of actually being Japanese, of course. and then you have to not be Japanese anymore. That sounds so. I understand why that would be hurtful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's political, and it's the same with most Asian countries actually, China,
really?
Korea. So it's not a big deal. It's just that it's sad that I had this experience, and I'm not going to be able to give that to my children and my all my grandchildren.
Yeah.
So it's a bit sad, because it's the case for third generations or fourth generations in the United States or in America. So I think a lot of people can relate, but that's it. But it might change because there's going to be a lot of problems, especially about the birth rate in Japan. So they might come back and say, oh, if you used to be Japanese, we'll give it back to you for if you pay your taxes and things like that. But who knows? We'll see. There are many things that I'm very proud about Japan. And obviously, if the country doesn't want you, kind of, because they feel like you betray them by choosing another citizenship, I get that. But again, Japan is one of the most incredible countries in the world, and I enjoy going back. I love Japan. I love Tokyo and all the cities, actually, not only Tokyo, but all the different cities with their specialities. And it hurts a little bit not to belong anymore. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel unnatural because, again, people treat me as a foreigner.
Earlier, you mentioned that you felt like you didn't belong, and in my experience, I feel like, it's quite complex to explain, but I feel like in Portugal, people know I'm not they know I'm Portuguese, like in the sense that I'm fluent, but I'm not Portuguese because, for example, I make a mistake or I have a slight French twang or whatever. And in France, because my family name is Portuguese, then people in France were like, oh, you're Portuguese, you're not French. So did you also feel like you didn't belong both ways in a way? Did you get that experience as well?
Absolutely. Well, so basically in Paris, there is a school not but where most half Japanese people go. It's called La Fontaine. Okay. And so they create that sense of community. But for me, I went to I don't know if I can say it, but that like a white school with only white people. I think there was like one black guy, one Arabic guy, and then me. Okay. And so obviously I was bullied a little bit at the time. A lot of people were making fun of my features, calling me Chinese and stuff, made in China. So it's not really nice. And so I was considered Asian back then, and I was considered foreigner when I was going to Japan. So that's the identity crisis, and I guess it made me stronger. So I'm not complaining right now. I actually wrote a book about that.
Did you?
Yeah, about my the hardship of being an Asian-looking kid in high school. If you're interested, like I can send you the Amazon link.
I will link it in the description.
Thank you. It's in French, only in French. I'm working on the translation. But anyways, so yeah, definitely. I felt Asian in France. I felt Westerner in Japan. But now I feel like, especially in Canada, it's a very multicultural country. They accept everybody and they don't really ask you questions. So for once, and that might be the main reason why I decided to move there, is the fact that you say you're Canadian, nobody's going to ask you, like, for real, but really, where are you from, Do
you still get that, like, in France? I know you don't maybe come here as often, but you still feel, okay, so, like, you say in Canada, like, you feel more accepted and, like, you're basically smooth, I suppose, like, you don't stand out, is what I mean. But do you feel like you do still in France when you come visit?
Not anymore, not really. I guess, I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up in the suburbs of Paris. And also maybe the fact that in Paris, most of my friends are multicultural as well. Okay. So I don't really see that, but or maybe people are just more mature at 30. When you're a kid, you realize that most of what other kids were saying was just repeating what their parents were saying. So, ton ami chinois, they were saying like your Chinese friend and stuff, talking about me. So they would just repeat, right?
Because in France, all Asian people are Chinese. Yeah,
obviously. Exactly. So they grew up.
Which is wrong. Sorry, I sounded serious saying it, but that's not what I believe.
No, that's common knowledge.
Just giving context.
Yeah, but statistically speaking, there are more Chinese people, so you have more chances of getting it right. But I was saying I'm half Japanese. People didn't care. I was Chinese back then. But yeah, no, I think growing up, and right now I'm going back to France, so I still have my French citizenship, and it makes sense to be French and Canadian.
And that might be a personal question, but did you ever feel like resentment in terms of being like a third culture kid? That's basically what we are, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel any resentment, like any difficult, complex feelings about it? Or
Absolutely, yeah. And I talk about it in my book. That's why,
okay.
But
Give us a bit of a teaser of the book then, maybe. You know.
No, but that's the thing. So I was bullied, and I just wanted to change the way my eyes looked. And it's funny because younger, I guess my eyes got bigger through time, so I don't really look Asian anymore. But back then, from when I was 6 to 12, plus I had like huge glasses, and I was a nerd. I was the typical Asian guy who's like only had A plus. And after that, when I was like 13, I became really rebellious, and I tried to change all that. I started wearing like. I became a punk kind of thing. I started.
Did
playing,
you?
Yeah.
Can we have pictures?
Oh no. That's too much detail. But yeah, I tried. That was part of the identity crisis. I just didn't want to be like the straight A student, and so I started putting gel and then having that skater boy outfit, and then learning punk songs. So rap songs and punk songs. So just to fit and being, just cool. And having that sense of belonging with other young people.
Like, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but is it maybe like you were trying to break out of that stereotypical mold that people would put you into, or was it something like that, do you think? Or
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And even I stopped studying from that point because I didn't want to have A pluses anymore. It was just too much pressure. Well, too much pressure. Obviously, my parents, especially my mom, she wanted me to have only good grades, but the others were just like, stop showing off. Language classes was interesting because I've always been fascinated by languages, and so I would work so much on my English. But that might be a French thing, when you start speaking English with the best accent you can have, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you're showing off," la bête kind of thing, So yeah, I became bad on purpose, and I stopped studying, and I regret it now because luckily after that I got accepted at the university and stuff, so it didn't really ruin my whole career path. But still, knowing what I know today, I would have just ignored that and keep on studying because I think it's more fulfilling and relevant to study than just to drop everything and kind of give up on everything.
And from what I know, which obviously is very little, I didn't grow up Asian, but there is this sort of stereotype in France that Asian people, I mean, they're all Chinese, obviously, so to speak, right, guys? They're all the same culture, like for some reason, obviously it's a stereotype, but also there's the idea that they're all like well-behaved, very discreet, they have good grades and stuff. So like, I guess you would probably get more, sorry for the word, shit for it, because you said you had great grades and you didn't want to like work anymore. Like, were you like, sorry, maybe that's like kind of weird psychology, but were you like unconsciously trying to like not fit that stereotype again? And
oh, for sure, 100%. Yeah. No, I didn't want my Asian genes to define who I was. I just want to be a cool guy who plays guitar, who gets laid, who sings, who is into skateboarding and stop being bullied because I was Asian. Yeah.
I wish I had a guitar right now.
Yeah, would have played together for sure.
All right, so I kind of also wanted to focus on the language aspect. So I don't know for you, but when I was younger, I used to feel a bit of shame about speaking Portuguese. I mean, in France, obviously, and that's the context. Like, did you feel anything about speaking Japanese as a French person?
Very interesting. Absolutely. And it's funny because it might be my first year at kindergarten or my third year, but I was confused, obviously. I came from a background where I was only speaking Japanese with my mother and my siblings, introduced to a French school, and having to adapt to that whole new system and that new language.
At this point, did you speak any French?
Yes, a little bit. Okay. Yeah. I was speaking in French to my father, but I was more comfortable with Japanese, 100%. And then sometimes, if I didn't know a word in French, I would say it in Japanese, which is totally normal. But my teacher at that time thought it was a problem. Like, he's confused. He doesn't know the languages. So she suggested to my mom, it'd be best if you could stop speaking Japanese
Oh, God.
for a couple of months, just for him to get used to French and speak French correctly. Luckily, she didn't. And at that time, I was also following extra, I don't know how you call it, but it's called kumon in Japanese. And I was taking extracurricular, how do you call that?
Activities, yeah.
Yeah, well, classes. Only
Like
for
Japanese
Japanese.
classes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Japanese culture classes, something like that?
No, it's the Japanese language.
Okay, Japanese. Okay.
So I was going to, that was maybe after in elementary school, going to school and having all the classes and going back home and maybe having 1 hour of Japanese classes.
Okay. What was the idea behind it?
It was my mom wanting to teach me Japanese.
Okay.
And so obviously, no, she wants me to learn Japanese.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so, and she feels more comfortable speaking Japanese. And some parents, and I'm not judging anyone, but they take the opportunity of having a child to practice their French. So they will only speak French with the child. And unfortunately, so the child wouldn't be able to speak Japanese. So that's their choice. But for my mother, she kept on speaking Japanese to us. And at the beginning, so I have two siblings, and we used to speak in Japanese together in school. But first of all, it was, we were discriminating other people who couldn't understand. And we were being laughed at. So
Like in public?
Yeah. We would speak Japanese like, ching chang chong chang chang, you know.
Oh my God.
So I was like, okay, well, it's not going to work out here. We're going to switch to French. And from that point, I lost Japanese. I stopped speaking Japanese to anybody. So I was speaking in French to my siblings, and I was answering back to my mother, who was speaking Japanese in French. And so I was still taking the Japanese classes. And at some point when I was going to high school, I stopped because it was just too much work. And it gets complicated. For people who are learning Japanese, you know, with the kanji and stuff, it was just too much. And so I started speaking Japanese again when I was at the university. Here in Paris, it's difficult to find a job if you don't have any experience. But luckily, if you can speak different languages, I was...
an advantage.
Yeah, exactly. So the Japanese restaurants, they're always looking for waiters. And I said, okay, I speak French and Japanese. I didn't need any experience. They took me. If there's anybody living in France who speaks Japanese, that's an easy job. And so I had no choice because the chef usually don't speak French. So you have to speak Japanese to them. Yeah, both. And French to the customers. And being like an interpreter.
Sorry to interrupt, but like the reason why I was like this when you said like your teacher was saying that, you know, maybe you should stop speaking Japanese at home, it's like, in linguistics, it's something that's well known, and it's absolute bullshit that you know, people like, just speak one language to the child because otherwise they're confused. I'm like, I just want to punch these people in the face. It's just so, I don't even know how to explain it, but it just makes me so angry because first of all, that's not true, scientifically speaking. And that's just kind of a way, I mean, I will be extreme saying that, but it's cultural genocide because you're trying to kill the culture of the child of immigrant, basically, like of the parent that wasn't born in France. Anyway, you know what I mean? And that's just...
I know.
That creates resentment as well. And probably for your mother, I mean, I never met your mother, but I feel like that must have been painful to be told don't speak your own language to your child, right?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're not going to teach parenting to a parent. Like that's... But I think...
some parents will buy it, you know? That's the thing that makes me angry,
true,
you know?
True. But I think maybe the teacher also, she doesn't know Japanese. So maybe she thought I was just making words up. And so just to be sure, she's like, okay, I want you to speak French properly. So if you could avoid using words that we don't understand, do that. And
but I think there needs to be more linguistic education towards bilingual kids, like, you know, native bilinguals, because it's just so misunderstood.
Yeah.
And of course, as kids, you mix up, obviously.
Yeah.
But it just takes a bit of patience, you know, just tell the kid, oh, that's a Japanese word, you know, do you know the French word? Like helping them, you know, develop the French skills, because when you're born in a bilingual family, there's usually like the home language, which is stronger and tends to be the non-local language. So in your case, Japanese, I suppose. Yeah. In my case, it was Portuguese at home. Obviously, we used to mix up speaking the wrong language to the person, but that's something that you can learn not to mix up. Yeah. It just takes patience. So it's just so dumb. Like they don't understand that it just takes time. But you won't mix them up forever. Yeah. It's just temporary. You need to adapt. Absolutely. Your brain is, you know.
I totally agree with you. But again, you know, teachers, they're not trained with a linguistic
that's what pisses me
background.
off.
So yeah. So she thought from her experience that it would make sense to be equal to the other students, to the other pupils. But she didn't understand the context. And luckily, my mom didn't stop speaking Japanese to me.
Thank
and
God.
That's something different also, because that would discriminate my father.
Wait,
Yeah.
do you want to sort of expand on why did you say it would be discrimination against your father? In what sense?
My father doesn't speak Japanese.
Okay.
So at the table, before, he wasn't really home. He was working very hard.
Okay.
And so the family language, when my father was not there, was Japanese.
Okay.
But then after that, we stopped speaking Japanese. And also my mother, when my father was there for, lunch or dinner, we would all speak French so that my father could be included in the conversations. So it's a bit different from your family, where I suppose both your parents speak Portuguese.
Yeah, they spoke both languages.
Right.
I mean, my dad eventually learned French, but
Right,
it was
yeah.
like Portuguese from Portugal.
So yeah,
Like,
so
no
the
French.
family language is still Portuguese, right?
Yeah. Like that, I guess the language was Portuguese. That was like the common language, yes, basically. And then French, obviously, because we live in France. Obviously, eventually we all spoke French. But
Right.
yeah, it took some time. Yeah. But I'm so glad that I didn't get that experience. Not that I know of. I'll have to ask my parents. But I don't think the teachers suggested that we start speaking, Portuguese at home or whatever. Because what pisses me off as well is that teachers, they have authority, or they're seen as authority.
Yeah.
So parents will tend to sort of follow the teacher's instructions because teachers know what they're doing. I mean, supposedly.
Yeah.
But in that case, they do not, because, there's no linguistics training. And by linguistics, I mean actual science, not like language learning, just to clarify to people watching the video. So that's why it angers me, because it's just a way of, it's like wanting the child to be integrated, but also kind of like erasing the culture. And that, for me, that's like morally wrong.
Yeah, but not trying to protect or defend them, but I might have been a bit behind the other pupils back then. My level of French was not adequate.
Okay.
And it would I would have bad grades basically, and so she thought, okay, I can see that. Well, I'm just trying to think about it, but she wasn't a bad teacher. I don't think she was a bad teacher, and she was like discriminating and thinking.
I'm sure the intentions were good.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's like,
I like to think anyway.
I feel like he's a bit behind, and it might be because of Japanese. So maybe for a couple of weeks or months, if we focus on French, it would be better for his education. But again, maybe a linguist, like a professional linguist, would have said something different,
Yeah, they would. I mean, hopefully. Otherwise, that'd be really bad. Yeah. And how did your relationship with, well, that's kind of a big question, I guess, but how did your biculturality and bilingualism kind of evolve, like your attitude? Because you mentioned that, in the street, you were kind of like shy about it, or like kind of maybe repressing it, I want to say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of what it felt like. How did it sort of evolve?
So, okay, after graduating from high school, I took a gap year and I traveled all around the world, and that's how I studied English as well. But then I came back, I started university here in Paris, and I was working at that restaurant. And so I started learning Japanese again. Not from scratch, obviously, but I had forgotten so much about the language that it felt like studying again. Maybe I was back to B1, I guess.
So how long did you sort of stop like using Japanese?
Maybe 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough to be very, very rusty. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes even grammatically, like thinking, okay, how do I say that? Like I know the words, but I just can't connect them together to make a sentence that feels natural in Japanese. And to this day, sometimes I say things in Japanese and I know it doesn't feel natural. It's completely understandable, but it's just like, there's something missing. And I ask a Japanese person, how do you say that naturally? And sometimes there's like, I don't know, like you're saying it perfectly, but it doesn't feel quite right. But then definitely working with Japanese people helped me overcome that to a certain extent, listening and repeating. So that's when I felt more confident as a person. Like, this is my identity. I don't care about the fact that, am I French? Am I Lebanese? There's something different also. Am I Japanese? I am who I am. This is my background, and I'm confident enough to embrace that today. So I'm just going to keep the best of all the cultures. The language is one thing, but then you have the culture. And so in France, well, we do have that family-oriented culture, but it tends to be a little bit more individualistic than Japan.
Yeah.
In Japan, it's more the community first, right?
It's like group culture.
Yeah, exactly. So putting others' needs before your own and things like that. And I'm trying to blend that in a way that feels balanced today.
That's very interesting because you definitely have like a cultural conflict almost, I would say, because like in France we're very individualistic and in Japan it's more like group culture. So wow, that's
actually in America it's even worse.
Is it?
Yeah,
individualistic.
Yeah, sometimes like you don't care about your parents, like it's a pain in the butt to take care of them after they retire. Whereas in France we do still have that sense of responsibility, but in Japan it's like next level, like it's your duty, right? And so I do have that a little bit, and also the fact that in Japan you don't really show your or you don't really express your opinion too clearly because you don't want to impose that on other people.
Yeah.
I am not really like that. I'll say things straight because sometimes it can, like, it's just
Easier.
It's easier, and then I don't want to. This is very political, and I don't want to bitch about the Japanese.
It's your perspective, that's fine.
It's my perspective, but sometimes I do feel like, and again, it's part of the culture to respect the hierarchy. So you have no choice; you're part of the system. But sometimes it takes so much time to make a decision because everybody's like, they don't want to impose, like, yeah, exactly. Whereas if someone says, okay, I think that should be the best way to do it, and here is why, and then everybody's like, yeah, sure, let's do this. So I tend to be a bit more like that. And that's my shocking attitude when I go to Japan. And I totally admit that, right?
Something that's interesting is, okay, so first of all, I've got another question before. You said like you learned to sort of be okay with your two cultures, your three cultures actually. So like, that might be a difficult question, but how old do you think you were when you started sort of realizing that? I mean, I know it's not like you wake up one day and it happens, but more or less.
I think it was, at university. At university, I was probably 20, 21.
Okay.
I was working at that restaurant. I felt Parisian. I was living in Paris. I was doing my studies. I moved to, I was an exchange student in Korea. I was meeting a lot of multicultural people, and I was fine with the whole thing. Yeah. Less bullying, less discrimination. Yeah, it all sort of came back all together. And I guess if you're in a situation where people point the finger at you and say, you're this or you're that, or you should behave like this, or I thought Japanese people were always on time, for example. I do sometimes, I'm sometimes late. That's being human, or like, stereotypical things like that. But I guess there was less and less comments or racial comments over the years. And so I guess it helped me make peace with the whole thing.
That's interesting. I was smiling when you said that because I feel like I was going to say that I had this realization when I was 25, but actually when I moved to Brighton and I would tell people I'm French and Portuguese, people were like, oh, that's so cool. I was like, really?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I was shocked. I was like, oh, you think it's cool? Oh, they think it's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny because...
And I was like, mind blown for me.
It was the same thing because at university I used to study languages, international business, and my language of study... I started with Japanese. It was too easy, so I decided to... Yeah, well, I had a background, so I wanted to learn something new, so I added Korean. So that's when I started... I know. So that's when I started learning Korean, and which is actually pretty close to Japanese. So thanks to my knowledge, it was easier than most people. Where was I going with that?
Talking about acceptance and feeling cool.
Yeah. So we're in a school where people are interested in the Korean culture. And so obviously they might be attracted by Asian people. So I went from, in high school, the only Asian kid nobody wanted to date, who was trying too hard, to, oh my God, you're Asian. That's so cool. The amount I suffered is like, I'm getting back now, And so, yeah, I was happy to have good experiences at that time.
Honestly, I still think about it. It's mind blowing. Yeah. Because when I was a kid, I was not cool. Yeah. Being Portuguese was full of stereotypes. And in England, they didn't have all these stereotypes. They're just like, oh yeah, I love Portugal. I went with my family. They say like kind of, not stereotypical stuff, but I don't know, at least they say something positive is what I mean, they're not like...
That was when you were adult, right? Maybe it would have been different in primary school.
So you mentioned that you were sort of like, I want to say an artist. I don't know how you consider yourself, but I'll go with artist. You can clarify if you want. And also you do like acting and stuff. So how does that sort of, what's the word in English? How does that influence your content? That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, I think it's just practical.
Okay.
In the sense that I have a full-time job. I want to have a YouTube channel. I want to create content for people to enjoy. But I also want to explore things that I'm passionate about. So how can I blend and merge acting, singing, making music together? So obviously I love music. And I think, putting a melody on lyrics is an excellent mnemonic to remember words or phrases. And it tends to often be the same, I love you, I miss you, I want to see you, and things like that, which is fine, it's good to know that. But yeah, so learning languages with music, so you add the musical aspect, or making impressions of
You do
characters.
Amazing ones.
Thank you.
I love those.
I'm trying. So that's
super funny.
because it has always been there, even before YouTube. just hanging out with friends in a bar, and then they're just like, "Oh yeah, Bong is good with impressions. Can you make impressions of an impression of that politician or that the character from The Simpsons or whatever?" And it made me laugh. It made other people laugh, and I saw it as a challenge as well. I saw it as a way to improve myself. It's just magical when your impression is on point. It's instantaneous. They just start laughing. And same with accents, like, oh my God, this is so accurate. And so just trying to pinpoint the phonemes or the intonations, whether it's for a character or an accent, and being able to put that together and just say it like just one sentence or one word that's perfectly pronounced, it has a magical effect on people. So I'm trying to go for that.
That fascinates me because I studied phonology and phonetics a lot, and it's all about like place of realization. I think that's the technical word. So basically where you pronounce things, like sounds are like, this is a box, and that's why you create the sound, obviously. But that's fascinating because that's not easy. So how do you, I wouldn't say come up, but how do you sort of imitate accents? Like, do you have a methodology?
So it's listening and repeating. And if I can have also a visual, an image of the person speaking, so I can see what's happening with the lips. Obviously inside the mouth is a bit more difficult, but I'm really trying to listen and record myself and compare. Oh, I felt like I was saying it properly, but now that I hear it, I have to exaggerate it a bit more. So not being afraid to exaggerate. And when you're making impressions, it's all about exaggeration anyway. So yeah, just listening and repeating basically, and repeating to the extent where it becomes natural. And I think it's also the way I approach language learning, because my goal as a language learner is to have the accent the closest to a native accent I can get. So I'll be listening and listening and listening. And if I can just say one sentence that would blow native people's mind, I'll go for it, I also see it as a performance.
It is performing, I think, speaking a language anyway. I mean, obviously imitating accents, it is performance, but I feel like speaking another language and wanting to sound like natural, let's say, I prefer natural. It is performance because you have to speak like you've never spoken before. I mean, literally, because that's not your language, for example, or your accent or whatever.
But I think it's also a way to experience your body on a deeper level. Like you feel new things. And like Japanese people learning French, it's horrible for them.
How do they do it?
I don't know.
French is so hard.
Yeah, even my mom, she's been living in France for more than 35 years now. And she struggles with some letters like the R, right? But I feel like if you succeed in making the proper sound, it's so satisfying. It's the same for me, trying to put very complicated sounds that I'm not used to together and just surprising myself. And it's the same with singing, being on the melody and being able to reach a certain note. I see it as a performance that makes me happy if I'm on the right note, if I get the right melody, if I'm able to sing. And I see it the same way for language learning and languages.
Is there I don't know if that's a good question, but like, is there like a type of sound that you find more difficult to like do? Like, for example, I feel like the R sound is usually one of the most difficult. Like, you know, like r, in like in Japanese, I can't do it like in isolation in Japanese, but you know, like all these sounds. Like, would you say like R is the hardest sound, or do you find maybe vowels more difficult to sort of reproduce? Because they're hard as well.
It
like,
depends. We have a lot of vowels in French. Yeah. Oui. Oui, aujourd'hui.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
U almost only exists in French, I think. I mean, maybe not the languages, but that's kind of a
by
rare
itself.
sound.
No, German. They use.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Tschüss. But it's like combining. Oui, oui. That it's considered like you might say it's two, but it's œil.
Yeah.
Œil and feuille. That's also very difficult. Or like close vowels. Ou u.
Ah, yeah.
Ou e.
Ou e.
You know, cœur.
Ah, okay.
Some people say court.
Coup de cœur.
Corps, cœur. Oh my god, it's so difficult.
Yeah.
You know, like subtle vowels like that. So, not sure if the R is the most difficult, but no, we have a lot of vowels in French. We don't even realize it. And some of them actually we lose and we don't even know.
Like what?
So, UN and HEIN. In the south of France, it's going to be pronounced, you know, eng.
Ah.
In Quebec also, un.
In Paris it merged.
It's the same.
Yeah.
So it's poor.
I didn't know that.
But normally you're supposed to say in standard French un and un. So there is a subtle difference. So which makes French even more difficult than French people can imagine.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of singing, so I don't know how to phrase the question. Why do you sing? I guess is my question. Like,
it makes me happy.
What happened? Like,
I like dancing too. You know, it just makes me happy. Yeah.
But I mean, like, did you sort of learn? Do you perform? Like, what place does it take in your life?
So again, back in the
because I love singing as well. So. And I hope we can make a cover one day.
For sure, man.
We'll have to do that
Anytime. So when I was a teenager, I started learning guitar, and I wanted to be like, you know. That's the thing. It's so funny to talk about that now because I was so desperate. I was learning guitar, and you know, I used to go on summer camps.
Okay.
And we'd play the guitar around the fires, like.
So you play for real, like you're an actual guitar player.
Yeah. Well, just the chords, you know.
Right, still,
you know, playing Oasis and Green Day, and you know, Sum 41, very easy songs. And so that's when it all started. I just wanted to impress people, making friends, and finding a girlfriend, which wasn't successful at all. I mean, I did the high school concert.
Okay.
But I don't know. I was just trying hard, man.
I feel like trying hard is a theme of your life in the early years.
I was just trying too hard. From then to after, and after that, I just lost interest. And then, I bought a guitar again and a bass, and I just play for myself now. And it feels good, you know. And also, before starting a YouTube video, sometimes just to warm my voice,
up a bit,
to warm it up, I would just play a song. I'm trying to also exercise a bit more the guitar skills because I've lost so much over the years. But I'm also, you know, I think everything is connected, and the more you engage your brain, the more it's going to be fluid to learn new things, whether it be languages.
Like we call that plasticity, like brain
plasticity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So ramifications in the brain that's going to help you learn anything. So just coordination, just biking, climbing. I'm just spitting out all my passions, but I'm swimming.
That's like your dating profile at this point.
pretty much. And so,
girls.
But so just exploring different things that's gonna help you, and also, you know, sports. I think sports, having a good blood flow is gonna make your body ready psychologically and physically to learn new things, from my perspective. And it just like it makes people happy in general. So it's part of all that, you know, being sporty, playing music, dancing, having fun, being surrounded with friends you can speak different languages with. That's the ideal life from my perspective.
That's very interesting because I feel like we have so much in common except for girls.
Oh, yeah.
Hashtag coming out on video. But, no, but it's funny because like I feel like sports like plays a good part in my life. Like I'm not like, you know, an athlete or anything, but I like going to the gym very often and like using my, you know, my not my brains, not what I mean, but like my artistic side, singing. I don't play instruments, but I love singing. I take singing lessons and stuff, and languages and all these stuff. Like, it's like using your body and your mind, and I think I don't have anything more interesting to say than that, but it's just like very interesting. I feel like I've got the same sort of approach to life, my life in general.
And some people ask me, what's your best advice for people who want to learn a language? And I usually say, have fun. Some people, and I get that some people didn't choose to learn a language. They are sent by their company to a different country, and they have no choice but to learn a language to survive. But if you don't have fun in the process, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to feel like, what am I doing? First of all, you're not going to feel like you're improving. You're going to feel like it's a task. It's painful. But again, if you like music, why not include that in your learning process, right? So just have fun. It's how life should be enjoyed, I think.
But what's impressive about some of the videos you've made is that you managed to sort of mix, obviously, your love of languages, your love for imitating accents, and also your passion for acting at the same time. Like, that's fascinating. Like, you put like together so many things, and that's just very interesting, I think.
Yeah. I wish I came up with that a bit earlier, the Julien Moulin, which is the French coach persona, Taka Sensei, who's the Japanese one, Bong Juan. So there's always a pun in the names, but I feel more comfortable because it brings the acting side a bit more.
Sort of a more general question, like, what do you get out of acting? Wow, that's deep, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even know how to start. It makes me feel good. And maybe it's like, obviously it should be a relationship, so I'm giving to the people, and hopefully they can be entertained by what I do. And it's very difficult on YouTube because you don't have that direct interaction which you do in a theater, for example. But through comments, I guess, that's it. You just want to entertain people, and it makes me happy. It's like, I don't know, it's like performers were like that, asking a professional dancer how he feels on stage. It's like, makes people happy, I guess. Makes it like you are achieving what you're good at. Ikigai in Japanese.
What's that?
Ikigai is a concept. What are you good at? What can you be paid for? What can you bring to the world? And there's another one. And you're trying to bring all that together. It makes you happy.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. I love personal development. So that's very interesting, actually. Wow.
Yeah.
Ikigai is about like feeling relief, or harmony, feeling peaceful about what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's basically what is Ikigai. And it's like a typical word in Japanese that actually I never describe it, so it's so kind difficult. Of funny to listen about it. But
yeah, because they made a theory of Ikigai, and so that's why. Yeah.
I heard about it in my business school as well. But an author who was couple author who was writing several books about Ikigai. So I think if you like about self-improvement, etc., I think it would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
About your self-loving, about your hobbies as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you can put everything together. Because if you're into singing, but you can't earn money from it, then you're not going to be happy. So it's like fulfilling all the spheres in your life.
It's like a balance.
About
yeah.
harmony, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Harmony, yeah.
But about something you really want to do, and that transcends you, kind of.
That brings joy, sparks joy, like she says, Marie Kondo.
Yeah.
Bless her, I love her.
But I think it's even more than that, because it's you can't help it. It's like it's stronger than you. Like, I need to do that. It's my call, basically. Yeah.
Transcends you or something.
Yeah. They translate it to raison d'être in French, which is a bit. Yeah, in English, it's very difficult to find something that's similar. But raison d'être. Summarize it.
Your purpose, I suppose, almost.
A purpose is weak, not, isn't it? Yeah, it's not enough.
So my final question, I feel like we went all over the place, but that was an amazing talk. I loved it.
Good luck with the editing.
Yes. Yeah, can't wait. But I guess sort of any future projects that you want to share with us inside YouTube or outside YouTube?
Yeah, so that's the thing. There are a few projects I'm working on. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep. But basically, I'd like to offer a course, an online language course for absolute beginners in French and in Japanese. I still don't know if I'm gonna ask, if it's gonna be free or not. I need to consider that because, guys, as you know, we spend a lot of time working on our videos and on our social media. So it'd be good to, earn a little money from that.
Be rewarded, basically.
Yeah, be rewarded, and with the broad vision of maybe making it a full-time job eventually, We'll see. Otherwise, I wrote a book, as I said. I'm writing another book related to language learning. And I'll be translating them in French. So in English and French, they'll be available in both languages. And I'll be also working in the audiobook version. So that's going to take a lot of time.
Will you do the audiobook? Or?
Yeah. I'll
wow.
record everything in my studio. It's not going to be perfect, but hopefully if you guys are learning French or if you guys want to know a little bit more about myself, it's going to be available, and it's also going to be a way for me to be rewarded for the hard work. So books, online courses, and then of course more videos on my YouTube channel. That's the main thing, I guess.
I feel like that's an interesting topic because we don't really talk a lot about money because it's taboo or taboo.
Yeah.
I never know how to pronounce it. But yeah, like I don't think people realize how many hours we put into our videos and how little I get. I mean, I'm getting very little back anyway. So I definitely get the idea of, wanting to sell something and making money. I mean, it's kind of seen as like something maybe bad or awkward, but you're working. So we say in French, tout travail mérite salaire. Basically, every job deserves monetary compensation, basically.
Of course. I mean, we do have the YouTube money from ads, and that's
so
fine.
little, right?
It is so little, but
I mean, we do it because we love it, obviously, anyway. So.
And obviously the books I'm writing and stuff like that, nobody needs, my main content is going to be YouTube videos, which is going to be free. Most of my content will be available for the people, so I'm going to try to keep that as my main focus. But having a different stream of income, I should be smart about it. I don't know if you've been to the Polyglot conference.
Not yet.
Okay,
I need to at some point.
But that's the thing. So I met influencers there. I don't like the word influencer for myself. I don't like using it because I don't like the idea of influencing people.
Yeah.
But I met a lot of them and they inspired me, and all of them were saying, man, you're working so hard. You need to be rewarded for that. And so they gave me options which are not, impossible to achieve in order to earn a little bit more money that I can reinvest in my YouTube channel. So that's the goal.
All right. Well, I suggest we stop there.
Yeah. That's.
But thank you very much for taking the time to answer all my questions, and that was really interesting. Like as I told you before, I really wanted to sort of talk about your background, like in terms of culture and languages, because I thought that was very interesting. Similar to my experience, but obviously different because I look white. In the world that we live in today, that makes a big difference, obviously, in the experience. But that was very interesting. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, see you next week, guys, or later. I don't know how to finish a video now anymore.
How often do you produce videos?
Once a week, I think.
So see you in a week, guys. See him in a week.
Yeah, see me in a week. Let's do that. All right. Bye.
Bye.